Hello, everybody. So, today has been a very busy day. In fact, the last few days have been very busy. I have received quite a few phone calls from American podcasters, media platforms, and so forth, wanting to talk about the fact that a group, or you might say the first group of Afrikaner refugees, have just arrived in the United States. In fact, I just spoke with Ben Shapiro about this, and by the time this video is published, I'm pretty sure that the discussion I had with Ben Shapiro on the Ben Shapiro show would already be online. So I'll share a link to that video. And I have some other interviews, big interviews, lined up for the rest of the day and the days that followed. So we will be talking about this quite a lot. Now, I mentioned that today in the last few days I've been very busy, and it's relevant to this topic because we need to talk about what is happening at the moment with the Afrikaners arriving in America, why the Americans are so welcoming to the Afrikaners as opposed to the South African government, what could potentially happen, some good potential outcomes and some bad potential outcomes, and what we believe should happen. So, firstly, and this is very relevant to the topic, I've just arrived back from what we call in Afrikaans a bosberaad, or a strategic session, an out of office strategic session for the Pioneer Initiative. And I'm very excited about what lies ahead, especially about the announcements that we are going to make on Thursday, which is 2 days from now. So if you are watching this video more than 3 days after it was published, you will then have seen already that the Pioneer Initiative has a new name. And I mention this because we will be talking about this quite a lot. When we announced the Pioneer Initiative uh, just over a month ago, we said that it's a sort of a framework structure that will be developed into a fully fledged institution. And that fully fledged institution will be announced on Thursday with a new name, a more comprehensive policy framework that we wrote and developed in coordination, or as a result of the contributions of our contributors, people who have already signed up. We have quite a lot of people who have said that they would sign up once we publish more about the institution, which we will be doing now. So thank you for those who have contributed. But this Bosberaad we had was very relevant because we spoke about our strategy going forward. And I want to make some remarks about that towards the end of the video. But firstly, about the Afrikaner refugees. So I've gotten so many phone calls and messages from journalists in South Africa and outside of South Africa, in Europe, but especially in America, who want more information. So let me say from the get go that we know very little about this particular group. It does seem that the South African government also knows very little. If you evaluate what they know based on what they say or what they are willing to say, it seems that they don't know much either. They have suggested that people who have queries direct their queries to DIRCO, that's the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, or the Foreign Affairs Department in South Africa, or to the American State Department. So, about this particular group, I do not know much. But what I do know about the prospects of Afrikaner refugees is firstly that there are quite a lot of people in America who are very welcoming to the Afrikaner people. And as an Afrikaner, and as a member of a community that has been persecuted for several decades and that has been treated, especially in South Africa, as a scapegoat, blamed for everything that is wrong with this country, as a punching bag, continually beaten and attacked by politicians for political gain, and to a large extent, as a community that has been treated by the international community as a pariah for the last few decades. It's truly something to see that suddenly our community is being rediscovered, and not just that, that we are welcomed. That in fact there are people out there who do not agree with the propaganda narrative that we are these evil, oppressive people who somehow want to oppress other communities and so forth, as opposed to a community that wants to live in peace in South Africa, in mutual cooperation with other communities, respecting other communities, but also as a community that has aspirations to govern ourselves, and that wish this right also for other communities or upon other communities. So, as an Afrikaner, and I think I speak for many Afrikaners, we are really grateful about the public stance that has been taken by President Donald Trump about what truly is happening in South Africa. The fact that Afrikaners are being persecuted. There are more than 140 race laws in South Africa discriminating against a minority community, the white minority, but the Afrikaners in particular. And the reason why I say Afrikaners in particular is because South African politicians have made it their pastime to publicly attack and vilify the Afrikaner community up to the point where the justice system is now defending the right of politicians to chant about the extermination of the Boers or the Afrikaners or the farmers in South Africa. So, and then you can combine that with all these statements about going back to Europe, people and politicians wanting the Afrikaners to leave. And then also this attempt by the South African government to change the South African constitution to empower the state to expropriate private property without compensation. And especially in the defense of this, to say that they want to take the property of white people in particular. That's what they say. And obviously we still have these commentators and analysts who would defend what the government is trying to do, despite the glaring and obvious facts about what is happening in South Africa. Now, having said that, I should add, and this is, no, let me first say that there are people in South Africa who want to leave. And from what I gather, and this is not just my own view, I've spoken with other organizations about this, especially agricultural organizations, you could broadly categorize those who are interested in leaving into three groups. The one is people who have experienced some form of trauma, such as people who have been in a farm attack, or people whose loved ones have been murdered, or some other forms of trauma. There are many forms of trauma that one could experience in South Africa, not just on the farms. And people who, for you might call psychological reasons, or something that's broader than just psychological reasons, do not want to continue to live in this country. That's the one group. The other group is people who are suffering economically, largely or partly as a result of these race laws that are actively working to push the white minority out. We have discrimination against white people on a variety of levels in South Africa, not just in terms of legislation. In terms of legislation, there is a vast array of laws that seeks to achieve only one thing, namely to marginalize and discriminate against white people living in South Africa and treat them as second-class citizens. But the discrimination goes deeper than that. It goes up to the point where the former state president publicly says that everything that is wrong with this country should be traced back to the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck in 1652, of course, who was the representative of the Dutch East India Company who established the refreshment station in the Cape. Or the same former president saying that a minority works like this, or instead, a democracy works like this. If you are part of a minority community, you should have fewer rights. And if you are part of the majority, you should have more rights. And the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, going to an international platform in New York City saying that there are no farm murders, there's no killing of farmers or white farmers in South Africa, there's no land grabs in South Africa, saying that we need to, and I'm quoting him, we need to take the land and give it to our people. And then in using the term our people, he refers to a particular section of society. And there are so many examples of the extent to which white people or minorities, not just white people, but also and especially the Afrikaner people have been targeted by the South African government. And so, as I said, there are three broad categories. There are those who have experienced trauma, who want to leave. There are those who are suffering economically through racial discriminatory laws and so forth. And then there are those who are, you might describe them as young working people, especially young men, but not just young men, who finish high school, who want to find a place abroad to work. So young men tend to want to go to be farmers, to work on farms and so forth. And young women tend to do au pair work, looking after children and doing some form of educational support or family support. And there are many of those. But what is important to say is the what we call mega farmers, the big commercial farmers, and the CEOs and so forth. Many of these people, or most of these people, want to stay. But it's not just the mega farmers and the CEOs, it's the majority of people, the majority of Afrikaners. Some people say that, according to the broadest estimates, about 1% of Afrikaners would leave South Africa. Now, I don't know what the estimates are, but I personally, I am an Afrikaner. I live in Pretoria, and I engage with Afrikaners every day. And I personally don't know a single Afrikaner who wants to go to America. We like America. We regard ourselves as friends of America, but we want a future for our community here in the southern tip of the African continent. And so, if what the American government does is only to push for a process of refugee status, getting Afrikaners to leave South Africa to go to America, there are two problems with that. The first is that it does have the potential to backfire on the American government, in the sense that it might be the case that there aren't really that many who want to go. But the second and more alarming issue here is that it has the potential to do much damage in South Africa, because every person that leaves us a little bit weaker. Now, if people want to go and they have a good reason to go, we should support them in doing so. And it's good if the American government supports them to do this. We do hope that those people would be ambassadors for our cause where they are, that they would contribute where they find themselves to raising awareness about what is happening in South Africa, and raising awareness up to the point where it leads to tangible action, not just people talking about South Africa. But of course, in order to get to tangible action, we need more people to talk. So it's not by definition a bad thing if people leave South Africa. It could be a good thing. But if that's the only thing the American government does, it would be a bad thing. And so we are very grateful for the fact that the American president and the Secretary of State and many others have publicly spoken out about the very, very destructive race laws that we have in South Africa, calling on the South African government to stop this. We are very grateful for the fact that there are strong calls coming from America and many other places in the world for intervention, that this has to stop, that South Africa needs change. And this is something that we should welcome, and we hope that the American government and other governments and other friends abroad would be engaged with this to a larger extent in the future. And then the final bigger picture remark that I would like to make, that goes back to my remarks about the Pioneer Initiative and our big announcement on Thursday, is that we need to understand that the problems in South Africa go deeper. They are deeper rooted than merely that South Africa has bad policies, or merely that the wrong person has been elected to be the president of South Africa, or that the wrong party has been elected. Because we know, if you think about it for 3 seconds, it's easy to recognize that if another party were to take over the country, the underlying deeper rooted problems would not go away. Why? Because South Africa has a systemic problem. And a systemic problem requires systemic reform. And so the way forward, the only sustainable way forward, is for the decentralization of the political system in South Africa, and for the variety of communities in South Africa to have much higher levels of self-governance, for people to be able to govern their own affairs. South Africa is very big. North Africa is a region consisting of a variety of countries. East Africa is a region consisting of a variety of countries. West Africa is a region consisting of a variety of countries. South Africa used to be a region consisting of a variety of, you could say, countries, republics, kingdoms, colonies, and so forth. And in 1910, this was added together into one big conglomeration, which became the Union of South Africa under British control. Now, the solution is not necessarily for South Africa to be a variety of countries. It could be that. But the solution is certainly for the South African political system to be much more decentralized, to be decentralized to a significant degree, which means that the central government must have less power and communities must have more power. And so we need to push much more aggressively for systemic or dispensational reform of the political system in South Africa. And when I say aggressively, I don't mean that we should be aggressive in pushing for this, emotionally aggressive. I mean that we should do so much more vigorously and it should be a much higher priority. And this will be the core focus of the Pioneer Initiative, which by Thursday evening will have a new name, a more finalized version. It would be an institution with a more comprehensive policy framework, plan of action, and so forth. And I really want to encourage you, the viewer, to support us in this. We already have a very comprehensive network of supporters inside of South Africa and outside of South Africa. And we need to do this in a variety of ways. And it is possible to change the system. We can do that. It is achievable. Many have done that and many have achieved this all over the world throughout history. And it's possible to do this in South Africa. And we are going to push for this. And we are going to encourage our friends abroad to speak about this much more actively, but not just to speak about this, to pressure the South African government up to the point where we don't ask for the South African government to decentralize the political system, but they don't have much choice. Now, there's much to say about how we can do that and is it possible and what could a decentralized system look like, because there are many different forms of decentralization. And we will be talking about all of these things at the Pioneer Initiative. We will be doing research on this. We will be publishing information on this. We'll do podcasts about this. We'll do documentary films about this. We'll go to other countries. We'll go to Switzerland and interview the best experts in Switzerland about the Swiss canton system and the extent to which it is applicable or could be applicable to South Africa. We'll go to other countries and we will make friends all over the world, as we have been doing. We will strengthen our networks and we are going to push for this. And I want to encourage you to join us, to go to the Pioneer Initiative website, pioneerinitiative.org.za, and to become a contributor. If you're not yet convinced that you should be a contributor, you are more than welcome to sign up to our newsletter and at least be up to date with what we are doing and what we intend to do in the weeks, months, and years to follow. But as far as the situation of Afrikaner refugees is concerned, we will be pushing this narrative that only having the opportunity of refugee status and nothing else could potentially be a bad outcome. A good outcome would be allowing those who want to go to do so, making it easier for those who want to leave, and also under the prospect that those who leave would, as I said, be ambassadors for our cause, would help strengthen us from their new position, but also to keep pressuring the South African government about the destructive policy ideas that they have been implementing and the even worse ideas that they still want to implement in South Africa. But more than that, to open up the conversation about political structural reform. To be creative in this. We don't want to return to the past, but we want to learn from the past. We want to learn from experiences all over the world, the extent to which political systems have been reformed for the better. And we are going to push for this. So join us at the Pioneer Initiative.